Oh, hi, good afternoon. Top of the afternoon. Croeso Abergwaun. Welcome to Fishguard. I had some nice comments after the last video about the slideshows I did, so I'm going to put together another slideshow here with Pluto in mind. Pluto's just recently arrived in Aquarius, and as mentioned in the last video, I want to look at things in a little bit more detail. But before we get into the details, I'd like to show you a video of Russell Crowe, of all people. Here's Russell Crowe talking about Colonel Gaddafi. You remember him? He was in charge of Libya. He was the president of Libya for a while. Let's just listen to Russell Crowe for a moment.
We are taught, for example, to regard Gaddafi in a certain way. Okay, but if you look into what happened in his country while he was the leader, you look into the fact that every person is given a house at a certain age. You look at the fact that everybody's education and health care is free. You look at if somebody showed a particular talent for something that required further education overseas, all of the costs of that were paid for by the government. Now, these are all things put in place by the same country's leader that we're told is evil and corrupt.
Yeah.
So it doesn't quite balance.
Okay. So Russ there, everyone's favourite actor, right? What a great actor. He's Gladiator. Russ talks about balance, right? But he's also talking about something that has been misleading. Could I say duplicitous? Have we been duped, is the question. Russ seems to be asking us, have we been duped about the profile and our understanding of this leader? We were taught that he was this evil, terrible dictator, and yet he seems to have all these socially progressive policies, or used to have before he was killed by the West. So that's quite interesting. We have this one truth on the one hand, and then we have a completely inverse truth on the other hand. What's correct? What are the facts? Well, when I look over here at the... Hopefully you can see that okay. That is the Grand Trine, or the kite formation that I was speaking about in the last video. And what we're looking at there is that Pisces point, sorry, beg your pardon, the Libra point that is vacated on the Grand Trine, on the kite formation. And we had it filled recently with Mars. Mars just was there at the point. And Libra is a very interesting sign because, as Russell used the word, it's balance, right? And we're looking at a grand air trine. Again, balance is an important word. Last time I spoke about harmony, but there's a correlation between those concepts. And when you look at about harmony and balance, the word law and justice comes into play quite naturally. When you think of the glyph or the icon of law and justice, you have the Lady Liberty, and she's holding the scales, right? Which is the glyph of Libra. Scales for balance, and I think on the other hand there's a sword, right? You get into tarot here. Sword is that air symbol. The symbol of air is the sword, right, in the tarot cards. And as Mars, being the fire sign, has just recently passed that spot in Libra, again we've got that fire and air combination. And fire and air, they fuel each other, right? You can't have a fire unless you've got oxygen. It's part of an interesting triangle, the combustion triangle: fuel, heat, and oxygen. And if you starve a fire of oxygen, the fire goes out. You have no combustion. And when you look at the elemental aspects of our world, the air sign is that mental idea that eureka cognitive moment of understanding, of finding out, deduction, if you like, when we talk about law and justice, right? You have the detective aspect. And from that cognitive ignition, then you have the action. It'd be very strange to have it the other way around, right? Well, it sometimes happens a bit too impulsive. It's one of the shadow sides of the fire signs, but much better to think things through before acting, right? You could bring in the watery emotions too, but as we're moving into fire and air, as alluded to in the last video, let's chat about idea and then action. So we're going to look at today a slide. Pluto's journey through Aquarius, the most fertile time after the forest fire. I lived in Australia for a year, in the centre of Australia, the red centre. The heat and the parched, arid land was a strong characteristic of the Northern Territory. I was in the town of Alice Springs in a school. And what you find out from living in Australia for a year is that these forest fires happen annually, very regularly. And then the ecology, the ecosystem has developed and adapted and evolved to a place where after the fire, the carbon you see in the picture here, the parched, barren embers are great fuel for the next cycle of life, all right? And this is very much the topic of today's slideshow, of today's presentation. The most fertile time after the forest fire. And Pluto now is in the air sign of Aquarius. And, perhaps those seeds, those kernels of new burgeoning, blooming concepts and ideas are that are, through the earth and water signs that we've been in for so long. They're ready to sprout. And interesting, when you get to Gemini, we'll look at Uranus and Gemini coming up. But bear in mind that Uranus and Aquarius are very, very connected. So when you look at the trine of Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini, bear in mind that that there's a strong connection. The seed shoots, explodes with the fire, grows through Taurus up to the Gemini air sign, where we get the splitting, the twins of Gemini, right? We get the two shoots, as in the picture. And this is cognitive understanding and appreciation and deduction and data transfer. This is where we are, perhaps societally and culturally. 20-year cycle of profound change has begun. Is this the end of an era or the most fertile beginning in a generation? For the next 2 decades, from 2024 to 2044, the planet of transformation will move through the sign of the future. This presentation explores this cosmic shift not as a forecast to be feared, but as a landscape of potential, waiting for conscious cultivation, ladies and gents. We're entering a time of great cultivation. And in order to have that healthy nutrition and nurture, you need to know what's what. What is true, what is false. The truth is very important, to give the foundations, that platform with which healthy nurture and growth to arrive on. Air signs. The alchemist and the architect. Pluto, the great regenerator. Pluto is a transformative force associated with deconstruction and renewal. It is the alchemist of the underworld, compelling a confrontation with one's darker aspects. And so, if you think about that on an individual level, it works with the personal planets. Wow. Pluto corresponds with Mars in many respects. On the societal level, on the collective level, on the cultural level, on a global level, confrontation with the darker aspects. It's a very interesting idea to get your head around. To release what is outdated and enable evolution. This process is forceful, often resulting in a climatic breakthrough that necessitates change. Okay, so chapter 27 is of the book by Howard Sasportas, one of my reference books. Very recommended. I'll put an Amazon link below if you want to get that book. It's a tremendous book. Strongly recommended. Especially if you're at the stage intermediate level of astrology where you're interested in houses. Pluto and Scorpio through the houses. And interestingly, Pluto has this strong connection with Scorpio being a water sign, but also with Mars as the higher octave of the personal planet of Mars. So we have a fire and water contradiction, polar paradox with Pluto and Mars and Pluto and Scorpio. And the question for me is often, does the liquid extinguish the fire, or does the fire boil the liquid? Plus, bear in mind that not all liquids, not all fluids are like water, and they quench and extinguish. Some fluids, take for example petrol and gasolina, are perfect for fire. Let's continue. Aquarius, the architect of the future. Aquarius, ruled by Uranus, is the realm of Aquarius and of progressive ideals and transcendence beyond limitations. It is the architect of the future, representing creativity and individuality that thrives outside traditional norms and is focused on the collective, the group, and society as a whole. Again, Howard Sasportas' book, Uranus and Aquarius through the houses. Next cycle. Story in 3 acts. The phoenix from the flames? What rises out of the ashes and embers? So we had Pluto in Capricorn, 2008-24, examining the rigid structures of the past. So Capricorn has that well, it actually starts with the sea goat. Starts with the emotion. If you look at the glyph, the sea goat has a tail of a fish or a dolphin, aquatic animal, sea life, and then it climbs the mountain of Capricorn, the mountain of societal position and power, wanting to get to the top, right? And then butt heads, crashes the Capricorn battles on the mountain. Who's at the top, who's not at the top, who's climbing up and who's falling down the precipice. These pecking order societal structures of Capricorn had Pluto just recently, relatively speaking, through the years. Again, when you think of Pluto that does that scouring job at the bottom of the pan, right? It knocks away everything that needs to go. Think of a shark in the sea, right? The shark is basically the vacuum cleaner. Anything that's dying or decaying, the shark will eat. So many of these scavengers that we have in nature, hyenas, jackals, vultures, these kind of creatures, they do an important job, right? They're the cleanup job. Anything that needs to go, they take away, and Pluto's very much got that vibe to it. And so it was passing through Capricorn, examining, evaluating the situation. And here we go in Aquarius, we have the freshness, the newness, like the snowplow going through the fresh snow. And then next, the transition. understanding the necessary deconstruction. And Pluto and Aquarius, next 2024 to 44, exploring the potential for rebirth and innovation. Then, back in the past, the old forest of Capricorn. For 16 years, Pluto, the force of deconstruction, moved through Capricorn, the sign of tradition, hierarchy, top-down authority. Governed by Saturn, this era was defined by conservatism, restriction and duty, a focus on established institutions. Key themes of the era: authority challenged. Pluto's transit exposed the decay within banking, government, politics, corporations. Anything that was coming to the end, Pluto accentuates that decay and death. Pluto, death and rebirth, right? Chapter closed, chapter open. Structural breakdown. We witnessed the cracking of old foundations and a deep questioning of traditional power structures. As Russell Crowe at the beginning was talking about, these power structures that present themselves as, in support of we the people. You look at Libya, you look at Gaza, etc., around the world. We have this confusing contradiction. Well, if they're doing it for we the people, then why are they doing that? The weight of ambition, a relentless focus on achievement and status, revealed its limitations and hidden costs. We got these extremities where how people fill their days is at such extremes of wealth and poverty. How is that justified? I know people who work as cleaners who, hugely industrious, fabulous work ethic and attitude, and yet they struggle to pay the rent for a bedsit, a one-room domestic accommodation, whereas people who have the same amount of hours in the day, 24 hours in a day, seem to be able to claim enormous wealth, opulence, privilege. These are seemingly up for reassessment, reevaluation as we progress. The cleansing fire of transition. Now, as Pluto enters Aquarius, its transformative energy acts as a cleansing fire. This is not destruction for its own sake, but a powerful, forceful process that clears away the dead wood of the Capricorn era. Pluto drives individuals and the collective to release outdated aspects of their lives, leading to growth and evolution. What is being cleared? Outdated modes of control and authority, rigid social and economic structures, belief systems that no longer serve collective progress. And we have cycles, right? You, again, mentioning Uranus, 84-year cycle. Well, you go back 84 years and you get to the 1930s, right? Where you had these patriarchal tyrants, authoritative leaders, fascists, right? Who were scapegoating groups in society in order to divide and conquer, divide and rule we the people, and maintain their power. Oh, look at those people over there. Look at that group, substandard, subhuman, evil groups that need to be smashed and taken down by us, as the wholesome and righteous crusaders of truth and justice, blah, 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 blah. And these these policies and these propaganda narratives duped the people, right? Fooled the people into believing that it was the correct course of action. And as the cycle repeats now, 84 years later, with Uranus in coming into Gemini again, that understanding, that data collection, combined with the grand air trine of Libra, justice and balance, Aquarius, pioneering truths, perhaps we're not going to be fooled again like we were on the previous cycle. Yeah. Tick-tock, epoch, epoch, tick-tock. Pluto is a transformative force associated with deconstruction and renewal, akin to a snake shedding its skin. Its method differs from Neptune's gentle dissolution. It is forceful, often resulting in a climatic breakdown that necessitates change. As Steve Jobs says, break down or break through, or perhaps both, right? This breakdown is necessary. What do they say? They say that chaos is another word for pre-order. Before you have order, you have to have chaos. You know, it has to get worse before it can get better, right? If you want to build a new house, you got to take down the old one. You can't build a new house while the old house still exists, right? You know, that action with the sledgehammer, seemingly very negative, but necessary for creativity, right? You have to break down the old in order to make way for the new. The forest fire analogy again springs to mind. Perhaps this is where we are. The fertile ground coming up, approaching, of Aquarius 2024 to 2044. After the fire, the ground is cleared and enriched. The 20-year transit of Pluto through Aquarius represents a period of unprecedented potential for new growth. The era will be shaped by Aquarian ideals, progression, a drive to invest new societal models, economic models, right? You think about some of these new leaders that are getting some traction. The New York mayor, Mamdani, is he? You know, he was voted, and he keeps it really simple. He just says, cost of living's too much. You need to help the grassroots, you know, people at the base, the people who support the foundations of society. Kept it really simple. Over here in the UK, we got a guy, who's new head of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, I think his name is, and he's taken on the economic policy of a very impressive economist called Gary Stevenson. And again, you know, what they're looking at is balancing the economics so that you don't have a huge wealth discrepancy. You know, it's totally out of balance, whereby rich people own so much and then they collect rents. It's the rentier economy. And so very poor people, what little money they have, in order to keep a roof over their head, it's not funny, in order to keep a roof over their head, they got to hand over the peanuts, the scraps from under the table that they collect to the richest people in society as rents. You know, it's just not logical, right? It just doesn't make sense. Why do the richest collect the money from the poorest? It just doesn't make sense, right? You know, from a cognitive mind level, something needs to shift. Balance, harmony, justice, power of the collective, a focus on community, networks, and shared purpose, radical individuality, encouraging unique expression within the group, transcending limitations, pushing the boundaries of what we believe is possible, pioneering innovation. This is Aquarius energy. The future is decentralized, a new architecture of power. Pluto's journey through Aquarius will fundamentally transform our relationship with power. The top-down hierarchical models of the Capricornian era will give way to decentralized network systems. The shift from hierarchy to network. Power distributed among peers rather than concentrated at the top. This is what the American Constitution was all about, right? It was making sure that despot tyrants are unable to arrive. So how has it been, you know, adapted? How has it been changed? How has it been altered so that that is happening as we see it clearly? Rise of the collective, grassroots movements and distributed communities gain unprecedented influence. We, the people, are the law. But yet, law is very expensive, right? If you want justice, the people with the most money are able to buy more justice than people without any money. So you get these, just as a quick example, you get these settlements out of court, right? Oh, well, we'll bypass, court cases and investigations and jury decisions by handing out loads of money. And if you're a billionaire, a couple of million, it's easy to just, brush it under the carpet. It's not exactly justice, is it? Justice is very expensive. Syntropy in action. We will see a collective tendency of life energy to move towards the greater association, communication, cooperation, and awareness. Without these tiers, without these stratas, you go back to India in history, and you get the caste system. Is it any different? Generations are born and they just inherit loads of money. They say that the families who were dominant and prominent at the time of the Norman conquest 800 years ago are still very much in power, because if you have the assets, if you have the wealth, if you have the privilege, it's just very easy to maintain. They say, it's a meritocracy and a trickle-down system. I strongly disagree. It's a vacuum up, not a trickle down. And if you own huge amounts of land or property or assets, then they just continue to make money, continue to accumulate, and this status quo is up for reevaluation, reassessment in a big way. Next slide. Revolutionary technology. By the way, if you want a copy of these of the slideshow, I'd be very happy to send it to you. I'll put a link below. If you send me your email address, I'll send you the slideshow. Revolutionary technology. Innovation meets the underworld. Aquarius drives relentless innovation. Pluto ensures this revolution is not merely superficial, but one that forces us to confront the very essence of power, control, and humanity. They were speaking about, last video, about the end of the age of Pisces and the beginning of the age of Aquarius. Well, if Aquarius is this innovation, you think about, the last few decades, a century, in comparison to what was before it. I mean, the metamorphosis is astonishing in terms of technological advancements. Okay, perhaps we haven't kept up in terms of sort of social cohesion and social justice, but there's no doubting the Aquarius technology boom is, it's a runaway train in many respects. Creating those moral parameters connected with the advancement technology, I think, is a very important consideration and priority for us, again, collectively as a planet, as a planetary consciousness society. AI, just this slideshow, right? Wonderful technologist, a couple of minutes and compiles and collates all this info to create these brilliant infographic slides. Beyond efficiency, AI will challenge our definitions of consciousness and creativity. Biotechnology. Genetic engineering and bioenhancements will raise profound ethical questions about nature and evolution. Digital identity and currency. Decentralized systems will redefine ownership, privacy, and community in the digital realm. So we mentioned the Constitution, and I'm looking forward to doing another video coming up about the 14th Amendment of the US Constitution, because the 13th Amendment was very much connected with the Civil War and the emancipation of the Afro-Caribbeans, the black community, and freedom from slavery. But then the 14th Amendment arrived, and what we're going to look at with that one is, did that then enslave everybody? Debt slavery. There's this label US citizen, which is perhaps different from being a a member of the Republic. You know, these semantics, these word labels create whole different realities somehow. And that 14th Amendment is perhaps another example of duplicity. We the people being duped into things. So yeah, we've got these realms where community in the digital realm. The Plutonian question: not can we, but should we? The transit will expose the shadow side. The transit will expose the shadow side of technology, forcing a collective reckoning with its use. Evolutionary, redefining community. This era challenges us to reimagine our societal fabric. The core task is to balance Aquarian radical individuality with a profound sense of collective purpose. The awareness of being part of something larger enables us to transcend the limits and boundaries of individual separateness and experience ourselves as a cell in the larger body of humanity. Cell. Back to justice, right? A new social equation. We will experiment with the new forms of community built on shared ideals, where the unique individual contributes to the health of the whole. The journey within your personal forest fire. This global transit is also a deeply personal one. Pluto in Aquarius asks you to turn its transformative power inward, identifying the outdated internal structures, limiting beliefs, and inauthentic aspects of your own identity. The personal process mirrors the collective. Deconstruction, questioning the shoulds and musts inherited from the past. Confrontation, facing the parts of yourself you have repressed or ignored. Again, the age of Pisces, illusion and delusion. Right? That sort of spiritual bypassing, that overly rosy view of what is real and true. And rebirth, like the myth of Inanna descending to the underworld, Persephone too, right? This is a relinquishing of identity that allows for a more authentic, evolved self to emerge. You know, to be objective as opposed to subjective, right? To hold those potential possibilities that, you know, perhaps what you've believed, what your identity is connected with, is not what you hoped it was. Let's keep it broad for that. But you know, I think that healthy appreciation of the potential, you know, back to Russell Crowe. We're all brought up or educated or duped into believing that, you know, these vile and evil tyrants that the media presents to us, you know, perhaps are, as Malcolm X said, you know, the media might present those that are good as evil and vice versa. Yeah. It's all up for reevaluation and reassessment. Tending the gun. The shadow of the future. Every archetype has a shadow. Pluto's transit will inevitably unearth the darker potential of Aquarian energy. Conscious awareness is our primary tool for navigating these risks. Potential pitfalls, cold logic over humanity. Okay, as we move into the air and fire, you know, we need to keep that heart-based morality, ethics, that can get lost in reams of data and realms of theory, the tyranny of the group, the individual suppressed not by a king but by the pressure of groupthink and digital mobs. You know, as Gandhi says, you know, truth is the truth even if only one person stands by it. Dogmatic ideals. And it takes bravery, right? It takes a lot of courage, la cour of the heart, right? To stand in your truth outside of the group, you know, to risk to be in jeopardy of exile socially. It's a traumatic concept to consider. It's a traumatic consideration. Dogmatic ideals. Progressive ideas become rigid, intolerant dogmas that refuse to be questioned. you know, I'm not from the USA. I haven't been there for many years, but you know, it seems to be that a lot of the belief in Trump and the MAGA situation, was very much as a knee-jerk kickback against the previous administration from Biden and the woke religion cult, if you like. But then in comes another one that seems very much to be questioned. You know, Trump was standing as someone who was going to expose all this Epstein scandal, right? And yet he seems to be very much covering it up. Watch this space. Dehumanization via tech, the danger of losing our connection to the physical world and to each other in a hyper-digital reality. Wow. You know, where do you want to start with that one? You know, these AI... Did you see that film? It was the new Blade Runner. I loved the original back in the 80s. But they made a new one recently, and it was... What's that beautiful Latin actress called? Ana de Armas. She played the digital love interest of the star of the show. And, you know, you see a lot of these films where these robots... There was another one, Ex Machina, very similar, where you have these kind of interdigital bio, you know, human and robot romances. You know, you look at where things are going with the online dating and porn everywhere. It seems that this is a big one. Dehumanization via tech. You know, that maintenance of organic connection is very, very important during these, you know, pioneering times where everything's up in the air. And then we come to the end. The future is a field, not a fortress. Astrology does not dictate our fate. It describes the weather. The energies of Pluto and Aquarius are powerful, but how they manifest depends on our collective and individual consciousness. The level of consciousness influences the expression of astrological placements. Think of the astrology as a mirror. Right? Back to electromagnetic frequencies. You know, there's a mirroring going on. It's like a chart, right? Like a map. You know, the road map of electromagnetic frequencies helps us navigate what's actually going on in the humdrum and the hustle and the bustle of life here. You know, in the Saturnian 3D material reality. The level of consciousness influences the expression of astrological placements, demonstrating that personal growth can expand one's potential beyond astrological limitations. Beyond limitations. You know, something that sums up Aquarian energies. We are not passive observers of this 20-year transcend. We are active participants with the power to choose which seeds to nurture in this newly fertile ground. And finally, the ground is cleared. The soil is fertile. What will we grow? Heel houden, ladies and gentlemen. See you next time.